They say nobody wants to work anymore. I wonder why. What could the reason be that nobody wants to work? Because it sucks?
I really hate to say this, but it's a classic gripe of out-of-touch corporate executives hiring minimum wage workers, or the trust fund baby who is angry that their gym is busy in the middle of the day. Nobody wants to work anymore.
That's right.
Now, I really hate to say this, but by looking at the numbers, they might have a point. Labor force participation is approaching generational lows even after the pandemic.
This is nothing, bro. This is not... It's gonna go, I'm telling you, in 20, 30 years, we're gonna have a labor force rate of 20, 30%. It's gonna be half of this.
While labor force participation amongst men specifically is the lowest it has ever been.
That's right, because like if you were a stupid-ass, dumb fuck guy, back in the day, you could have a job where you have a hammer and you turn big rocks into little rocks. But now there's an engineer that makes a machine that turns big rocks into little rocks, so you're sitting at home on your ass playing video games. That's the thing. You still had grunt work. There ain't that much more grunt work now back in the days.
Have been happening at the same time that unemployment is theoretically quite low, which, if the economists are to be believed, means it should be easy
the reason why the unemployment is extremely low is because it's being represented without including people that have exited the job market. That's the reason why it looks really low, probably.
People who want to get a job, right? Well, not quite. And these numbers are confusing at best, or downright misleading at worst.
Of course,
people just don't want to go to work.
There's a poll I read a long time ago. Only like 18% of Americans feel engaged when they're at work.
I hate my job!
Who the fuck is this girl? Oh my god. Hello Kitty, this is Jesus fuck.
My job!
The signs are everywhere.
Man.
Businesses, especially restaurants, need employees and they need them now.
Dude, less than 20% of the country likes their fucking job.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so there are two general schools that people fall into when they see that nobody wants to work anymore. The first group are wealthy executives, business owners, or just people who have always worked incredibly hard who don't like that jobs are going unfilled. So they blame it on lazy young people who would rather sit around all day smoking cones and watching skibbity toilets.
Well, why wouldn't you want to do that? Why you want to sign up for 8 hours a day to do some bullshit for somebody else and not make enough money and waste you're gonna waste your whole day? Because you work for 8 hours, that means you're working for 10 hours, right? Because you got to get ready, you got to think. Usually there's like a preparation period. You got to drive to work, you got to go back from work. Like you have your lunch hour. Like we talking about a 10-hour investment. It's 10 hours every fucking day. Like think about how much you could do with 10 hours. For what?
The second school of thought agrees that yes, people don't want to work. They don't want to work demeaning jobs where they won't get paid enough to support a decent quality of life. It's nice when two groups who are so different can agree on something. So really, the only thing left is to work out why people don't want to work. Now, in most cases,
they don't get enough money and that working doesn't improve their life. It is actually so simple. Like, if somebody could work and then they could buy a mansion in LA, they'd work. If Burger King paid a wage that allowed you to buy a mansion, there would be 1 million people signing up to work at Burger King. It's so obvious. What is this? Or just a house. Yeah, just a house.
Jobs that nobody wants to work fall into one of three categories. The first are jobs that are just paying well below market rates given the experience or the location required. Businesses aren't going to be able to fill a full-stack senior development role in Silicon Valley for $50,000 a year plus equity in their questionable pre-seed startup.
Probably not.
But there are still plenty that try. Even entry-level jobs that pay minimum wage in very high cost of living areas are going to be much harder to fill in a city where even finance bros are living in shared housing. Now, hot take alert. But just like there are no shortage of crappy businesses and managers that expect to pay workers nothing for world-class skills and experience, there are lots of workers who expect world-class pay with little or no marketable expertise. One of the most insightful pieces of data on this—
Yeah, because they're stupid. That's the reason why. People don't have any skills, and why are people going to give you a bunch of money if you can't do anything? Like, you're 3 years out from getting replaced by Flippy. Of course they're not going to respect you or give a fuck about you. Why would they? You're about to get replaced. Yeah, I mean, I'm just being honest, right? Like, that's it. Of course.
Issue is this recent survey right here. It asked a selection of Americans what they considered to be the minimum salary they would need to be financially successful. Now, most of the responses to these numbers have been laughing at the Gen Zs just entering the workforce who think that almost $600,000 a year is a realistic salary goal. Because for most people, it just isn't.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, so you think that you need to make $600,000 a year to be financially successful? That's probably a bit much. Yeah, I feel like that's a little bit higher than average, right? Damn.
Unless you are in a few very specific career paths, there are basically no jobs that pay this money. And
Probably
even
not,
then, you need an insane amount of luck to get those opportunities.
Yep.
Now, you can blame this on young people who don't really know how the world works yet. Or
the reason why it happens is because people look at the lifestyles of people on social media, and people on social media make a lot of money, so they relate to that, and that's why they think that they have, that's why they think that they need to have that much money. And I think that, like, you could easily say, well, what about celebrities back in the day? But, like, social media personalities and shit, there's, like, an extra degree of, like, parasocialness that goes even farther. And I think because it goes farther, you have people that get wrapped up in it and they believe in it. Yeah, so you admit this is kind of your fault? I mean, I don't really like showing off money or doing anything like that. I mean, I think you can live fine. You know, if you make $100K a year, I feel like you can live totally fine. Probably even less than that. I mean, there's a few places in the country where, like, that wouldn't be enough, but it's, like, really just a few. Most places, like, that's enough.
Media that makes it look like every hustle bro is flying private.
Yeah.
But it's all distracting from a more interesting data point. The average boomer thinks financial success is achieved with a salary of just under $100,000.
Yeah, sure.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is still almost double the median national salary. But in most major cities where people can actually find jobs that pay this much, $100,000 certainly doesn't afford a lifestyle of financial success.
This is actually a really good catch-22 that this person making the video is bringing up, is the fact that in the places where a lot of high-paid jobs are available, they're also the highest standard of living and highest cost of living. So, like, yeah, you can get paid a lot of money in San Francisco, but there's an extra zero behind everything that you're trying to pay for, too. So, yeah, very good point.
There is simply a massive gap in expectations between the generations looking for their first jobs and the group responsible for giving out most of the jobs. So they both agree that nobody wants to work, just for different reasons. The second type of job that nobody wants to work are in workplaces that push their staff, demand unreasonable overtime, or have management that are needlessly abusive. This happens in a shocking amount of businesses across the country. And even if you are lucky enough to avoid a boss that thinks shouting is enough,
half of the employees who are exposed to workplace harassment or misconduct? That's insane. Have y'all had this shit happen? See, like, I only had, like, 1.5 jobs, right? Like, I worked at IRS 2 years on and off, and then I worked at Sam's Club for a week. Y'all had this happen? Damn. Because, like, we never had this happen. Wow. Yes, I'm the harasser. Based. Bro, keep him in line, man. You gotta keep him straight.
Effective motivation tool, you have probably worked some overtime out of fear of losing your job or being reprimanded. According to a 2023 workplace survey, the average full-time worker across the country studied...
I feel like working overtime as being in salary position versus, like, being an hourly employee is very different. Like, I remember whenever we worked at the IRS, people would compete for overtime because it paid so well. Like, you had, like, all these government multipliers. So, like, you had, like, if you worked on Sunday, you would get paid more money. If you worked on the weekends, you would get paid more money. And if you worked at night, you would get paid more money. So, like, if you can work on Sunday at night, and this is, like, back 10 years ago, right? Like, more than that. Like, you were getting paid, like, $25 an hour. So, like, everybody was trying to get in on that, right? Like, they were constantly trying, double time. Yeah, and then you also have your overtime pay that kicks in at what was it? At over 40 hours. Yeah, it still is like that. Yeah, exactly, right? And so people were trying to farm this as much as they could. Stacking multipliers? Yeah, they were playing like an ARPG.
Is now putting in an average of 9.2 hours of unpaid overtime.
Yeah, so it's
These
way
jobs
different if you're
often
salaried.
don't have much trouble finding people to start, but they do struggle with high staff turnover. The third are simply jobs that never actually existed.
Right.
You probably all know about ghost jobs by now. But even if you really do want to work, there is a good chance that most of your applications are just going to build out a workforce database.
Oh, they put this out there because they legally have to, but they've already decided to hire the person in-house for, okay, yeah.
Not to actually be considered for employment.
Yeah.
Now, whatever the specific reason, the results are the same. Less people end up working. But aside from settling some beef between entitled Zoomers and some out-of-touch boomers, this data all reveals something more concerning about work in the current economy. It's not that people don't want to work anymore. They simply can't afford to.
It's not even that. It's that people are disconnected from the fruits of their labor. They have no means of understanding and owning any degree of, like, what's the word? Like having any degree of self-respect, of any dignity, of any sort of light at the end of the tunnel. Like you're just working at the Amazon fulfillment center, putting things in boxes for 20 years, and nobody gives a fuck about you until you get replaced by a robot. Like, of course people don't want to do that. Why would somebody want to do that? And I think also the internet has provided people with a false sense of thinking that they can like make a ton of money on the internet, when a lot of the people that, this is like going to be maybe a hot take, but you know how people always say that like, oh, well, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs dropped out of college? Yeah, they did. They dropped out of Harvard because their business was doing so well. You can't apply this to you dropping out of community college or your local state university because you don't want to take the math class again for the third time. So you have a lot of people that are trying to compete on like on an international level on the internet, and they're not willing to put in the work for it. They're not willing to be creative. They're not willing to actually. A lot of people don't understand how to make money. Fundamentally, making money is finding a need and then solving the problem and then getting people to solve that problem, getting people to pay you to solve that problem for them, right? That's basically what almost all ways of making money are. So people don't really understand that. And because of that, they try to go on the internet and make money and they can't do it. And I think that in a lot of cases, it's because they're fucking lazy. And you guys know this with streamers. Like a lot of streamers that aren't successful or that lose success, it's because they are or they get lazy. Like, yeah, you're not going to do very well if you're not putting in 100%. And it's people everywhere, right? It's people with crypto. It's people with making websites. It's people with doing course programs. It's people with everything. Like the people that you really see succeed in anything are almost always the people that are working at it constantly. A lot of people think being self-employed is like a, it's like a free blank check to just, oh, well, I can just work whenever I want, so I just won't hardly work at all. But if you do that, you're not going to be self-employed for very long. That's just how it is.
So it's time to learn how money works to find out what's really behind the worst phrase in the workplace. This week's video is sponsored by MyHeritage. Ever wondered what remarkable stories are hidden in your family history?
No.
MyHeritage is the world's leading platform for genealogy research and DNA testing, trusted by over 90 million users worldwide. With 20 billion historical records and advanced AI tools, MyHeritage makes exploring your roots not just accessible, but truly enjoyable.
Bro, I read this Black Friday DNA sale. I read that something totally different. I was like, what the fuck?
Here's a fun discovery I made. My great-grandfather started a brewery in Germany, and it's still thriving today. Imagine finding out your family's legacy is still making its mark. That's the kind of excitement MyHeritage can unlock.
Right.
I started my journey by adding a few basic details, and their Instant Discoveries feature brought my family tree to life with whole new branches in seconds. It was incredible to learn about connections I didn't even know I had, including distant cousins who lived fascinating lives. One of my favorite parts of using MyHeritage is transforming old black and white photos with their photo colorization and animation tools. When I colorized a photo of my great-great-grandmother Sophie, it felt like stepping back in time and seeing her smile come to life. The animations even added a touch of personality, showing what her expressions
that's just weird, bro.
And mannerisms might have been like. And
this is the first point, gentlemen. Do you know what we just witnessed? Necromancy version 1.0. It will never be worse than it is now. Keep in mind.
Not just about what you see. MyHeritage also lets you deep dive into historical records to uncover stories and details. From ship manifests to old census data, seeing your ancestors' lives unfold in official documents is like piecing together a historical puzzle.
Right.
Ready to discover your own family's hidden stories? MyHeritage offers a 14-day free trial so you can experience the
What about alpha and
platform's
beta
full
versions?
range of features. Start your journey today. Trust me, you'll be amazed by what you uncover. Okay, so yeah, there are millions of people out there that think nobody wants to work because they couldn't hire someone with 20 years of experience on a programming language that has only been out for 5 years for $15 an hour.
Yeah.
There are also people who don't want to work because they think unless they are offered 6 figures in their first roll out of high school, it's not worth their time.
Yep.
And they would be better off sitting at home working on their NFT dropshipping business.
Maybe they would be. Maybe they would be. The thing is, like, I never shit on anybody who's trying to hustle and make money. I know that as a kid, I was hustling trying to make money at like 5 years old. And so by the time I was in middle school, like I was already making money like 5 or 6 different ways. Like my mom would buy me a lot of video games, but I'd also buy a lot of my own video games. That's what I spent all my fucking money on. And I never sold drugs either. Never sold drugs at all. And anyway, like people always assume or make assumptions. Yeah, no, you should always, if you think that you can do something successful as an individual, you should always go for it. Fuck it.
Both of these groups definitely exist in shockingly large numbers. But even though it's really fun to make fun of both sides, it distracts from the much more important reason why labor force participation is getting worse.
Yeah.
Well, as you might have been able to guess, this trend is really being driven by specific age groups and specific locations.
Yeah, of course.
If you look at labor force participation and exclude the youngest generation of workers and the oldest generation of workers, it's actually approaching all-time highs, which really makes sense when you think about it. It's common for both men and women to work full-time these days, and for most households, it's simply a financial necessity. So yeah, even if people don't want to work anymore, they kind of are stuck doing it anyway.
You have to work. Yeah, that's the thing, is that, and this won't be the case forever. Soon, there's going to be so many automation tools and ways that people's jobs get replaced by robots that having a job will no longer be a requirement in everyday life. It's unavoidable.
The reason labor force participation has fallen off in general, though, is because the average is being dragged down by a lot of young workers and old workers. The old workers are the easiest to explain. As people started living longer, retirement ages were pushed back, and more of the population began working in non-physical jobs. As a result, a larger share of the population over 55 remained in the workforce. This has started to reverse, though, as self-funded retirement systems and general asset prices have allowed a lot of over 55s to step back from the labor force, especially after COVID, as a lot of people received severance packages and decided that an early retirement was better than going back to the office.
Yeah, it's probably good.
Labor force participation from young people just entering the workforce either out of high school or college is also pulling down the average, just for different reasons. More people than ever are getting a college degree, which means they are starting to work later. And fewer people are working part-time jobs while they study because for many, it's simply not worth it given how much debt they are going to be in when they graduate anyway.
Yeah, it's because people don't want to do it. I think that like what's happened also is that people have just kind of given up on thinking that if you work hard, you're going to be successful. And I think it's kind of a toxic mindset to have, but I feel like a lot of people do have it. And because of that, you have nowadays, people just don't give a fuck. They don't care about working hard. They don't care about doing anything. And you can't really blame them because for them, there's no amount of work that they're going to be able to do that's going to give them the lifestyle that they want. I gave up. Yeah, exactly. It's too much. Work smart, not hard. Yeah, but here's the problem is that when you're stupid, you can't work smart. You see that? That's the concern, is that if you're dumb, you can't do that.
This might not also be a shock to
Fix
you.
the school system? Some people are born with less talent points than other people. Everybody has a different height. Everybody has a different facial structure. There are some people that are just stupid. And you're not going to be able to train somebody like that to understand a job that requires a lot of critical thinking. That's it. Like in the same way that you can never train a dog to drive. It's just not going to happen. You can't train a dog to write language or to, a monkey to build a house. You can't do it. So there are some people that are closer to that than you'd might imagine. And every single day, the threshold for a person to get in and have a good living gets higher. It's not like before stupid people had a harder job. It used to be easy if you were stupid to get a job. But now it's a lot harder because most of those jobs have been replaced because they're super simple. Because if they weren't super simple, the stupid people wouldn't have been able to do them. That's just it.
But it's getting really damn hard to find a job out of college. A few months ago, a post from a professor at Berkeley made the rounds after it spoke about his top students from a top college struggling to find work in technology, an industry that was hiring highly intelligent graduates like this as fast as they could make them just 24 months ago. Previously, a Berkeley CS graduate, even if not a top student, would receive multiple appealing job offers in terms of work type, location, salary, and employer. However, outstanding students, like those with a 4.0 in major GPA, are now contacting me worried because they have zero offers.
I think that also another big component for this too, this is probably not something a professor would say, is that if you, like for those of you guys that are business owners, would you want to hire somebody who came out of a really good university or somebody who's self-taught, self-motivated, and has been coding ever since they were 9 years old? I wonder. Yeah, I fucking wonder, right? I mean, there it is. It depends. I would always take somebody probably. And here's really what the point is. The point is that going to university, what you learn in a lot of cases is probably not as, like a lot of what I learned, let's say 10 years ago, or even 5 years after I graduated, that stuff didn't have any relevance anymore. It wasn't important. So you have people that in a lot of cases, and this is especially true with like business school, where a lot of classes in business school, especially undergraduate classes, are a complete waste of time. All they're doing is they basically created terminology to fill up the space of a class time. It doesn't actually, it's not applicable to the real world. It doesn't have any actual function. It's like people that understand, I always make this joke, right? I had a friend that got he got a degree in theoretical physics, and it got him a theoretical job. And then he had to go back and get an actual engineering degree. Like, a lot of people that understand things on, a theoretical level, they're not ready to, work and compete. And this is actually even something that, I remember seeing some guy talk about this. He went to school for, computer science, and then he went to, DEF CON or something like that, or, some sort of computer science convention, and he was comparing himself to the people that actually were there, and he was like, oh my God, I'm so far behind, it's embarrassing. It's insane. So I feel like the lack of quality of universities to, deliver quality candidates is a big issue. And I think the reason why it happens is you could say it's DEI or something like that, but I actually don't think that's the reason. I think especially with tech, it's because the field moves so fast that what you learned in freshman year probably isn't relevant by the time you graduate. That's the truth. And so I think that's the real reason why it's happening too, especially with universities and high-end universities. And this is also by the way, obviously I do some hiring and things like that, but I am speaking from a third-party perspective. This is just an observation.
I suspect this trend is irreversible and likely part of the broader trend impacting almost every employment sector. It's pretty grim stuff coming out of one of the best schools in the country.
Doesn't matter.
It might not be the most logical thing to do, but a common reaction from people who can't land a job with a degree they got to make them more employable is to just go get another degree. The rate of mass...
That's what my friend did, yeah. He had over $100,000 in debt by the time that he finished. Now, nowadays, he's working... I think he's up in, Chicago, something like that. And he just had a kid recently. Actually, my other friend told me. And, he's probably making, $150,000, $250,000 a year now, right? He's fine. But, man, there's a lot of people that don't have that.
Masters and PhD recipients has grown even faster than people getting an undergraduate degree, because that's now normal to stand out in a highly competitive job market. And to be honest, it's a nice way for people to avoid the reality of the job market for another few years. Spending another 2 to 8 years at college...
They think that they're going to wait it out and then the economy will be better in 4 years. But what I think is going to happen is that a lot of people are going to get degrees that will be made invalid or irrelevant in 4 years.
Get advanced degree means people aren't in the labor force, which pulls down the average to look worse than it really is. So those are the ages that are perpetuating this dumb myth. But this trend is also highly dependent on location. And to see that, you need to go to the place where apparently the absolute least amount of people want to work.
West Virginia? Wait, really?
Yes. The Rust Belt state has the lowest labor force participation in the country.
Damn,
but
so
also
that's where
some
it
of
is.
the most unusual statistical anomalies. The state is quite poor after its major industries like coal mining and manufacturing were either outsourced or simply fell out of
Yeah,
wide.
exactly. Because if you're a coal miner, like, you don't have to be a wizard to be a coal miner. You can not know how to use a smartphone and be a coal miner. And so, and I do think you don't. No, you don't. And the fact is that, like, those people, like, if your job is turning a nut on something like this, there's not a lot of brain power that requires. It's rough work. Horses work their fucking ass off, but they're stupid. Working hard and having to do something that requires critical thought are two very different things. In my opinion, one of the hardest jobs in the world is working in a restaurant. Now, that requires some degree of critically thinking. Absolutely, it does. But it's not like a doctor or something like that. So, yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of different spectrums here that are working at the same time.
Spread use. This means that a lot of areas have effectively been left behind with no major employment opportunities, meaning that labor force participation is much lower than the national average.
This is exactly what I said at the beginning, right? Like, he's literally fucking saying it, that the people that can't get jobs are the people that used to have really simple manual labor jobs.
But strangely, in some areas, the participation rate is much higher than what would be expected. A recent study conducted by economists from Hamline University, Cornell, and Virginia Tech found that depending on the county, labor force participation in West Virginia ranges from 42% to 77%, a gap between regions of 35%, while the average across the US states is just 17%. Less than half of West Virginia. It's not unusual that cities and working towns will have higher labor force participation than other areas, because people often specifically move to these locations just to get
For a job,
But this variance was startling and uncovered a bigger national trend. The people in areas that still had work can't afford not to work, and the people in areas with no work couldn't afford to move to areas with work, since it could mean giving up family support networks or simply paying for the cost to relocate.
So they're just fucked no matter what. That sucks.
A lot of people who had the financial means have already moved out of the state, only making this problem worse, as they take business opportunities and money away with them. It's a dense read because it's an academic paper. It's for nerds. But if you ever feel compelled to say that nobody wants to work anymore, I definitely suggest you have a look at it. The report itself also looks at welfare issues specific to West Virginia. But just because the state is experiencing this problem the worst doesn't mean that it's in any way just something hurting them.
It's a mining canary. This shit's gonna happen everywhere.
The trend of a few concentrated cities doing extremely well while everywhere else stagnates can make nationwide figures look good. But it also means people who want to work have an option of trying their luck for one of the few jobs left in areas with fewer opportunities, or living in an extremely expensive city to compete with everybody else, fighting over a spot in the few places left where people can reliably get ahead. Finance and tech have become one of the last escape ropes for people to make a deal with the devil to get out of these areas with little to no opportunities.
It's a deal with the
devil. And I am going to be writing an article about how even that career path is becoming impossible in my completely free email.
Of course it's becoming impossible because there's a lot of people that are getting into it. Here's the truth, is that if you're getting into a field because you want to make a lot of money, you probably don't have any intrinsic interest in the field, which means that you're probably not going to be very good at what you're doing, which means that you're going to get beat out by people that do have intrinsic interest in it, and they're going to beat the shit out of you. And so, big surprise, like, oh, I went into finance because I wanted to make a lot of money. Yeah, there's people that also go into finance because they really like finance. And they're the ones that are going to work longer. They're going to work harder because they can self-motivate. That's really what it's going to be. Yeah, you're going to lose every single time.
newsletter. So sign up if you are interested in reading that and other articles that will never be made into videos here. Thanks for watching, and thanks again to MyHeritage for making this video possible. Check them out by scanning this QR code or clicking the link in the description. Now obviously, a lot of this could be handled by companies just allowing remote work, so go and watch my recent video on why companies absolutely will not let that happen for anybody except their CEOs. And make sure to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.
What, for some sort of like fucking economy thing? Like, yeah, I'm not sure. But like, yeah, no, discipline beats motivation every time. Yeah, but here's the problem. People that say things like, oh, discipline beats motivation. Do you know what beats discipline and motivation? Sorry, discipline or motivation? Discipline and motivation. The people that you're competing against for jobs that start at $200,000 a year are extremely disciplined, and they also know what the fuck they're doing. Like, I mean, you're competing at a very, very high level. And so, yeah, I mean, it's super simple. An actual skill, yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to have both in order to compete at an extremely high level. Yeah, or they know someone. Yeah, but like you can rule, like, I mean, there's always going to be people that get ahead for some bullshit reason that they shouldn't be getting ahead for. Like, this is like back in the day, you had, you know, like kings that were like products of incest and were like basically functionally mentally deficient. Like, you had all this kind of stuff happen for many, many years. There's nothing new with that. It's never going to go away. Yeah, nepotism. Yeah, I mean, well, nepotism used to literally be the rule of the land. It was called royalty. There's the video. I agree with pretty much everything he said. A lot of people, like, I'm the kind of person that I believe that I actually think that what's going to end up happening is that there are going to be so many jobs that become automated that you're no longer going to be able to expect to have a job. And when that happens, then you're going to see more conversations about universal basic income. You're going to see conversations about, you know, like, how can somebody afford to live? Like, what can somebody do? Slavery. Yeah, we could. I think that there's a good chance that we will, by a vote, bring back some form of slavery or indentured servitude. I think there's a very good chance of that happening. Now, I didn't originally believe this, but based off of like how things have gone in the past, like I'd say like 5 years, especially 2 years, I think it'll happen. Yeah, why? Because people are stupid and they want to be taken care of and they don't want uncertainty. And I think that people's fear of the unknown will be more important to them than their pursuit of liberty. And I think that they would be more than willing to throw away their freedom in order to be safe and to not have to worry about the future. That's what I think is going to happen. And I could be wrong. Oh, I could be wrong. But I don't think I am. Yeah, facts. I know. That's why Trump won. Better future. Yeah, and I think also when people believe a functional version of slavery, and it's not really going to be slavery, right? But it'll be some version of that. When they believe that that version is better than what their future is. You underestimate the hillbillies? I think that they underestimate what they're going to be like when they don't have any money. How do household AI servants and robots being slaves come into that theoretical scenario? People want human connection, and I think also the robots will do that, which is probably why there's also a good chance that, I don't know, I mean, you know what? I probably shouldn't even say that. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. When this feudalism shit starts, can I be one of your vassals? Yeah, we are speed running into neo-feudalism. That's what's happening. And I think it's already started to happen now, but it will become more apparent in the future. Say it? Okay, well, I think that there's two ways to solve the problem, right? You can sterilize the majority of the population, or you can have them sterilize themselves by getting them all addicted to porn. You could also have half of the population kill the other half of the population with like a big world war. You could have a pandemic like COVID kill everybody, or at least like 80% of people. I feel like, yeah, there's like, those are the three pretty much main options of like how to do a massive depopulation effort. To like get rid of a lot of people that aren't really necessary. Yeah, for sure. Like that's what I would assume. When will this happen? I don't know, probably 20 years. Maybe earlier, but I think it like really would black pill. Well, no, it's not black pill. It's just what could happen. Yeah. So I mean, clip it and save it. Clip it and save it. I'll probably still be streaming in 20 years. See what happens.